Sign language, or just signing, has sparked curiosity in people who have little to no experience with it. Do you know how many times people have told me, oh my god, I would love to learn sign language. Where'd you learn? How'd you learn? Is it hard to learn? Well, it is a language, so just like any other language, it takes time and effort and motivation and socializing and having fun with it. So today's video is going to cover pretty much an introduction into American Sign Language and the deaf community. I think learning about the language itself, its history, deaf people, and the deaf community is really important when wanting to get involved with the deaf community, learning the language. But anyways, watch until the end for a little signing surprise. Hi, my name is Elizabeth Lisi Ramirez and welcome to my channel. If you're new here, don't forget to like, subscribe, comment down below, hit that bell for notifications so you don't miss a single video. Why would you want to miss me? I'm BelieveELI on all social media platforms and the links are down below in the description. I post, or at least try to post, once a week, but I'm really bad at it. But I promised myself that I was going to be creating more content this year. So we are halfway through the year. We're in April 28th today. That's the day I'm recording. But I have the rest of the year and I will make more content for you. Woo! Now let's get right into it. First, we're going to talk about language, community, and culture. Oh, and just so you know, the information I'm giving you is from the book which I used when I was learning ASL. Hold on, I have the book here. I'm going to show it to you guys. So this is a book I used, A Basic Course in American Sign Language, with 3 writers, and it was illustrated by Frank A. Paul. Not important. This is the 2nd edition. I don't know if there's more editions now because this was like a while ago. But this is where I got some of the information, as well as from my own brain, from the years of study, and from my life study, because I'm a CODA. So, which you'll learn what a CODA is in this video. So, American Sign Language and its community. We're going to first start talking about language, community, and culture. The term sign language has been used for a variety of different sign communications. It was like a generic term for sign communication. Just because you see people signing doesn't mean they're using ASL. One, every country has its own ASL. Every country has its own sign language. So they could be using their own country's sign language or maybe a sign communication like the ones that I'm going to mention now. But there's an important distinction between American Sign Language and these other sign systems, sign communications. And that is that American Sign Language is a natural language and it is an official language. It is different in its structure to those of sign systems. Sign systems are usually very heavily influenced by English, the English language. There's a variety of sign systems, like I was saying. Some of the names are Signed English, Pigeon Signed English, Pigeon Signed English, Manually Coded English, and Sign Supported Speech. There's more, of course, but those are just some. American Sign Language is the language of a national community of deaf people here in the United States. Here as in where I am. I don't know where you are. American Sign Language, shortened to ASL, is also being studied in many schools by thousands of students in college, high school, among other settings. Likewise, many hearing children who have deaf parents have learned the language from their parents. There's a name for those kids. It's called CODA, which is what I was saying earlier. CODA stands for Child of a Deaf Adult, or Deaf Adults, so it could be plural. Many people in the community like to joke around saying it's a small community, it's such a small world of deaf people. We say that because gossip goes around like that. It just, woo, very quickly. So it seems like a small world, but it is very large, in fact, in the whole United States. Now, the word deaf is capitalized on purpose, for a purpose. We use this capitalized form of deaf to refer to people who make up communities and a national community of ASL users. Now, you're probably asking, like, what difference does it make if you capitalize the letter D in deaf? Well, we do this because there's a distinction between deaf people who are not part of the community and do not know the English language and do not know American Sign Language. So the difference becomes a difference between deaf individuals who use ASL and are active in the community, and then there's deaf people who do not know ASL and are not part of the community. They don't participate in the language or the community of deaf people. Just because one does not hear doesn't automatically make you part of the community. And it doesn't mean that they know ASL. And then vice versa. There are many hearing individuals who know ASL and are very active in the deaf community. These hearing users of ASL are part of the deaf community wherever they may be, and they participate with the language and the culture and everything. But, however, they're not deaf. See, by learning ASL yourself, you are too starting to get into a new community, the deaf community. And you'll learn a lot about the community and the culture of deaf people. If you're liking the video so far, why don't you hit that like button, which might be on the other side, because I'm also really bad at figuring out what you see on your end. What was I saying? Oh, if you're liking the video so far, like the like button. Just hit the like button. If you like the video so far, hit that like button for that YouTube algorithm and helping me out. Now back to what I was saying. Within American Sign Language, there are dialects and varieties of the language that are used by people from all around the United States. Just like in spoken language, there are dialects and other varieties, there's slang within the language. ASL is the same thing. Now we're moving on to common misconceptions of American Sign Language. It helps to understand what American Sign Language is by understanding what it is not. Yes, ASL does use gesture. However, it is the same as English using sound. English isn't just merely sound, just as much as ASL isn't just merely gesture. And it is not mime. It is not a mime in a box. It is not a miming thing. We are not miming. Sure, some gesture may have like cup, drinking, but there's a reason for that. There's grammatical aspects to it. There's a lot that goes into the cup, drinking the cup, And that is an important point about ASL. It is not miming. It is a language. One cannot understand it until you learn it. And like with any other language, it takes years of study, interaction with the deaf community, socializing, practice. It takes work. It's not just, oh, I could sign. No. It's a language. Just like learning French or Spanish or many other languages that I'm just not going to name now. Oh, and ASL is not universal. People, for some reason, think that ASL is just the universal, there is only one sign language in the world, and that is just not a thing. It's not the thing. Nope. Every country has its own sign language. Does it make sense? It's a different country, different use of language. And that even goes as far as some of the Spanish countries, it's not just like Spaniard sign language, it's like Cuban Sign Language, Colombian Sign Language, Dominican Sign Language, just they're all different. And there is no universal sign language. Not officially, at least. ASL is not derived from the English language and has no roots in the language. Because of the sign systems that I mentioned earlier, they do depend heavily on the English language. Many people get it confused and think that American Sign Language is just an English visual way on the hands, which is not the case. ASL structure is different from English structure in many ways, but alike in other ways. Interesting enough, ASL has grammatical features that are similar to those in Russian and other languages. So moving on to the roots of the language. Many languages have roots or influences from other languages. That's just a thing. That is a thing. And the same thing goes for ASL. ASL has been in the United States as early as the 1700s. The United States was colonized by a variety of European cultures. Therefore, we can assume that the signing communities of deaf people in Europe had a part of an influence on the language and on the lives of deaf people in this country. For example, there is a large influence of French Sign Language in American Sign Language. This is because of the establishment of the School for the Deaf, which was a historical event which led to the convergence of two sign languages intertwining. American Sign Language and French Sign Language, that is. Of course, over time, ASL has evolved and separated itself from some of the French influences. Like, you might be able to recognize some of the signs, but you won't understand the language fully, simply because it is different. It's a different language. And then, although there were many English colonists in the United States, British Sign Language didn't have a lot of influence on American Sign Language. Let's move on to the culture of deaf people. ASL binds the deaf community, but that's not the whole story. That's only part of the story. In the case of deaf people, clearly not hearing and the language is what connects them. And as you develop your fluency in ASL and interact more and more with deaf people, you will see cultural differences between you and them. This is a normal part in the process of learning any language, but it's important not to make assumptions. You first should understand what generates that certain behavior from deaf people and the community. So now we move on to beliefs and worldview. To be of the deaf culture in the United States is to share with other deaf people a system of complex beliefs about yourself, the community, ASL, and the world around you. This knowledge that deaf people have is what generates certain behavior. It's how they know and interpret the world and go about their daily life in the world. And this is how we see them and comment on as being deaf. What is interesting among deaf communities is that deaf and hard of hearing, it has nothing to do with your actual level of hearing, but rather your perception and your way of acting in the world. See, deaf marks a central connection to the community, the language, everything. While hard of hearing really means that they have some aspects to them like hearing people do. Let me explain what I mean by that. So, hearing people speak on the phone, speak out loud, and other things. Hard of hearing people would do the same activities, whereas deaf would not. So that's what I mean by, like, the labels are more cultural rather than audiological. There are deaf people who can hear to some degree and speak pretty well, where there's also hard of hearing people who cannot hear a thing at all and do not speak well. What is important is the public behavior, and that's what makes you deaf or hard of hearing, at least in the community. Important! Deaf people do not view themselves as disabled or handicapped, because they are not. They just can't hear. They view themselves as competent individuals with a linguistic and cultural history. All right, there's so much I could say about American Sign Language, and this is some of the stuff that was in the book, but I think I have talked your ear quite a bit. So this was just a short introduction. You are more than welcome to comment down below any questions you have, questions, comments, concerns, all of the above. Go ahead and comments. I'll try to either, if there's enough questions, I'll make another video about it, or, you know, I'll reply to you. Honestly, I'm really glad that I've been able to share this with you, and that I'm going to continue sharing the community with you, and the language, and all the happiness it brings. Yeah. Now for that signing surprise you've been watching all video long for. I'm going to show you guys the ABCs. Kind of quickly, because the next video will really touch on them. Ready? A, B, C, D, E, F, G, H, I, J, K, L, M, N, O, P, Q, R, S, T, U, V, W, X, Y, and Z. So, again, my name is Elizabeth Lisi Ramirez, and thank you for watching.